said, whether tragic or it's happy, Eric will cover whatever's happening, whether it be your gym.
Welcome to The Point. I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. It is Tuesday, October 2020. And if you saw it while we were on air last night, the President of the United States has returned miraculously back to the White House, filmed a commercial, done an announcement, did it from the portico on the front of the White House. Yes, I used a fancy word like portico because he went up there out of breath, clearly on camera, not healthy as he claims to be, and told us, he just smiled, did a whole camera thing, and then just told the nation, after almost 210,000 dead, told the nation, COVID's no big deal. Don't sweat it. It doesn't sound like advice I'm gonna take. Unfortunately, as followers, just drink it up and lap it up. Like reality doesn't matter. And that brings me to today's show. Today's show is about bullying, and something that we all dealt with when we were in school back in the day, but has become worse. Since 2016, bullying amongst adults has taken over the news. You see it on social media. People who want to fight you on Facebook, the trolls that show up on Twitter, people who make the snide comments on Instagram. For instance, just yesterday, a friend of our show, you guys just saw him last Friday, Mo Vila, was on Newsmax TV, a conservative-leaning network, but Mo has a regular contributorship there. Mo went on there yesterday and was sharing his thoughts on Joe Biden and how, just what he does every week, talks about Joe Biden and the Biden, because he's a Democrat and that's what he talks about, so it made sense for him to be on a show giving his viewpoint. And to read the vicious scumbaggery douche canoe comments that came out of people's mouth attacking the man. They included attacking his weight, his sexuality, and hoping that he caught COVID and died. For those people, this show is definitely not for you, and so we make sure our format goes against everything you stand for. So keep sending me those messages, sweetie. I appreciate them. I hit my Peloton every day, I watch what I eat, and I plan on being here for a really long time for my family and for you guys. So if anybody wants to bring the same tough guy comments that they bring towards Mo, you're more than welcome to bring them here. Strangely enough, you guys rock, because when Mo was on our show, no comments were made, but we got thousands of views. Go figure how that works with this great show. It's because you guys rock. We all know it. But we're going to be talking about bullying. And bullying is such an important topic because our kids used to face it when they went to school. They don't anymore because they're home. It's also why there hasn't been any mass school shootings in almost a year, because they're all at home, which is a good thing. But our children are now seeing us become either bullied or bullied. Now, I fall under the category of a former bully. I used to enjoy it. I was an athlete, and also, hey, I happen to be a military guy, and sometimes you just come across, well, jerkolian, or you can use the other word that rhymes with mask hole. Yeah, fill in the blanks, you figure out what I'm referring to. That's what I used to be. So I wanted to bring on a good guest and good friend of the show, Dominick Quartuccio, onto the show today to discuss bullying. And bullying is key, because we see it. We see it from our own President of the United States, his following, and a lot of just his disciples, as I call them, his cabinet, right? People justifying all actions that we see. It's not right at all that we should be dealing with this as a country or as a people. This is not what this is designed for, folks. So we're going to talk about bullying. And our main topic that Dominick and I will be talking about, and this is something that I think everybody needs to understand, is when did being manly mean that you have to be a bully? No, you should open the door for women. You should open the door for anybody. Sit there. Don't be looking for a thank you. It's like making a post on social media and demanding your like count. It's very weird. Don't do that. Don't worry about how many views, how many likes, how many clicks you get. Okay, probably worry about the clicks if you have a call to action in there. But on the serious tip, bullying is out of control in our country. It's only going to be worse these next 20 some odd days because, folks, let's just face it and have this adult discussion right now. We all know the standard tradition, just like I said yesterday on this show, the standard tradition of the election will be solved by midnight Eastern Standard on November 3rd is long gone. We're looking at weeks or months. The drop dead date is January 23rd at inauguration time. So no matter what goes on with the court, but let's face it, COVID-19 is now being treated because somebody miraculously claims to be cured, but we're seeing there is a leak. It's a 15-year-old who loves TikTok and comes from the Conway family. And so far, everything that little youngster has posted has come true. So her credibility is pretty good, which is sad that we're taking credibility from a 15-year-old because we can't get it straight truth from our own White House. I don't give a crap who you're protecting, but if our chief of staffs are quarantining for 14 days because they came in touch with somebody with COVID, how come our president, who was too much of a coward to join the military, yeah, I said it, he was a coward, sick coward who hid behind money to not serve his country and then has the audacity to call warriors like John McCain, rest his soul, and other Vietnam veterans cowards. And for our wounded veterans, that man looks down on, and our dead he looks down on. That man has no room in the world to say anything. He's not a leader, he's a dictator. And people who vote for him, y'all have to question your soul and see what happens. Because I don't know how you sleep at night. And if you could tell me, oh, just fine with a pillow and a book, you have no common sense at all. Do some research, people. If you're gonna let our country be divided by this man, when I hear somebody say, I support him, I get sick. Like, physically sick. And they're like, oh, you're a liberal. No, I'm not. I'm not. Don't define me by some stupid term. Number two, if you're gonna message me, please, for the love of God, understand I served. So don't send some stupid message telling me I need to go enlist or come back from where I'm from. I don't want to move back to Florida. It's hot as crap there, and I don't want to live there. We have some lit places that my wife and I would like to list. Florida did not make the list. It never makes the cut. When I'm thinking of moving, Florida's the last place I want to move to. We moved from California, a state my wife and I both love. I consider her a home. My wife considers it a home because that's where she's from. So people, let's not fake this here. Bullying is out of control. It's out of control. And our guest today, when we come back from the break, is an amazing guest. So let's take a minute, or the host needs to take a minute, but let's take a minute and get ready because we do have an amazing show. So when we come back from this short break, we're going to welcome today's amazing guest. Strap in, folks. I promise you, it's going to be a wild ride. Let's see you guys after the break. Welcome back to The Point. I'm your host, Eric Mitchell, as usual, and we got a good guest for you today. I promise that we're not always going to be recapping the debate, but come on, it was worth going over. We did that just the other day with my good buddy, Mo Vila. Amazing guest. We have another guest. We're going to talk about kind of some behavior that we're seeing. We've seen it for the last 4 years, let's just be honest. Some of us have dealt with it longer in life. We're talking about bullying behavior and other things like that. It's out there in this society we live in with social media being so dominated right now. With people get on there, and you know the people. You know they're on Twitter. No names. One of them's orange. But if you go on Twitter, you see people, or Facebook, and they're always right. You can never be right, have a difference of opinion. You apparently don't live in America anymore. I don't know what happened. I used to believe you can go on there and be like, hey, the Yankees are the best baseball team, and the only people who would disagree with you would be the Red Sox fans, and they're okay. They're allowed to disagree with you. Cowboy fans say the same thing. Anytime somebody says America's team, a Patriot fan will usually go, well, no, we have titles, you don't. It's just the weird world we live in. But my guest today, you're going to love it, Dominick Quartuccio. See, he told me that's how I say his name. Dominick's joining us, and we're going to jump into this conversation. So let's get right to the point with today's guest, Mr. Dominick. Dominick, how you doing? Did I butcher your name enough? And I did it with the hands, too. So
You did well. I mean, it's usually about 10% easier when you say Quartuccio with the Italian hand. Yeah,
I
did
well
double
enough. Hands. I did double infant, those little SNL hands back in the day.
20% easier with
baby hands. I don't know why. It's weird. I have not even time. So how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing well, man. I really relate to a lot of how you started this conversation today, so I'm looking forward to getting into it with you.
You know, and you're one of those guys that I look at because you talk a lot of, you cover the man. the manliness side of the house, I like to say. And you've been on some podcasts of a guest we've had on our show many times. Everybody out there in TV land, you guys have seen George Bryan on there. Dominick, if you've followed George's podcast like we've told you to do, you've obviously heard Dominick on there. But Dominick, one thing that we've seen the last 3 years, and I'm a parent of 2 teenagers, and so I've heard about it probably longer than 3 years. But with this current president, bullying has become this new thing. It's this very much, you're wrong. It's weird to not admit you're wrong anymore, where you used to be like the manly thing to do is to fall on your sword, right? I mean, you've heard that term, I'm sure. Like, I screwed up, I'll fall on my sword. It's something us married folk are very familiar with because I do it quite often still to this very day. You're right, honey. Even if she's wrong, she's always right just because I'll fall on my sword. But there are times, seriously, that I've fallen on my sword. We fall on our sword in business. We fall on our sword with relationships. We fall on our swords with friends. If we screw up, it's the normal thing to do to say, I'm sorry. Instead, now we are sitting here in 2020, and now it's like, no, if you're wrong, you're like, it's fake news. This person is wrong. So that brings me to the debate. What were your thoughts when you saw that, right? Because there was bullying right there from the get-go.
Yep.
It was like a living example. It's not just Twitter. So what were your thoughts just right off the bat on that?
I tuned in maybe about 10 minutes into the debate. I sat around for 5 to 10 minutes of it before I shut it down because I didn't think it was worthy of my time. The way that the way that was being held, the way the discussion was going down, I didn't think it was worthy of many Americans' time or energy. Yeah. After I shut it down, I ended up going on social media and I saw a lot of mental health professionals coaching their audiences on how to breathe through that experience, through that debate, because it was so triggering. It was so childish. It was so unproductive. And, the analogy I think I gave to you before we started recording was, it was like watching a baseball game where the pitchers refused to throw strikes. They just were beating batter after batter. And the game that we have come to love and the faith that we've come to have in the system was shattered to a degree by watching something like that. And so I chose to withdraw my attention and energy there, and I made a call out for all 3 of the men in that debate forum. We obviously have President Trump, we have Joe Biden, but we can't forget Chris Wallace, who is also a really important third part of this, and why the thing went off the rails. And we can get into that in a couple minutes too, in my perspective on that.
For sure on that, as we jump into that. But we want to talk about, because you're right, and I've always said it was like a soccer mom with a carload of kids, and little Donnie in back is the one who's throwing jelly beans, giving everybody wet willies as they're driving down the road. That's how I felt for Chris Wallace, a very respected journalist. I have mad love for him. Now, there's been a lot of talk that debate, now both sides are looking for winners, and I think America was the clear loser out of that
Correct.
Hour and a half. And it was hard to not watch. Working in the media, something we watch. I sat down with my children. They were embarrassed. It wasn't a debate I grew up on. Growing up on Reagan, Bush, even Clinton, even Barack Obama, an expert one. John McCain, fabulous debater. Mitt Romney, another great one. Any of the Bushes, they're terrific. Of course, the Clintons, Hillary Clinton. Hey, Bernie Sanders is a good guy to debate with. This was just unbelievable that the leader of the free world was behaving this way, but now they've talked about changing the rules, and I want to give a quote to our audience in case someone saw this. The president came out with a comment, and his response was, when they said they were going to change the rules, why would I allow the debate commission to change the rules for the second and third debate when I already won the first one?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Dominick, we'll keep with the baseball, the sports analogies here. Why, when it comes to being manly, why does that automatically come with bullying? Because I think being manly to me is something different. To me, being manly, me having a 13-year-old son, being manly to me is being a man of honor, a man of spiritual belief where you believe and you have your convictions and you stand for it, opening a door, having respect for women, having respect for everybody, not running around telling everybody they're wrong, respect for everyone, and understanding people all have things in their past and you can't judge them. Obviously brought up in the debate quite often was Hunter Biden and his opioid addiction, which seems to be this crutch that nobody's ever screwed up in their entire life. And I think we all have different addictions. And the person who was accusing it has clearly a huge stripper addiction. So what are your thoughts? Why is bullying and being manly in the same sentence when I don't think they are? But in the last 3 years, it seems like to be one, you have to be the other.
Yeah, I think it's a travesty that we've somehow found ourselves in a place where bullying and being manly are somehow seen as like interrelated, as conjoined twins. And it makes no sense to me. But if we want to ask why it's come to this, outside of what we've experienced the last 4 years from our president, if we go back to 1980, the Oakland Men's Project developed something that was called the man box. And the man box is this invisible box of behaviors that if a man abides by, then he's considered to be a man inside the box. And some of those lines of the box would include, you have to be aggressive. You have to know the answer at all times. You don't need help or support. You certainly can't act like you're wrong. You have to be dominant over others, especially women. And these are many of the invisible forces that a lot of men are raised in. And I certainly know, being 41 years old, I grew up in an environment where many of those things were taught explicitly and subtly to me. And as long as you're abiding by that box, then you get to stay a part of the crowd. You're socially acceptable. Now, when you have a president who is the ultra box, right? Like who's putting forward, I'm never wrong. I win every debate. I never admit that I'm wrong. It gives permission to a lot of other people to strengthen those areas of the box. And the real men that I know, the men who are doing the inner work, men who are courageous, are the ones who can be strong on the inside and withstand and take someone else disagreeing with them, who can integrate someone else's diverse perspective and create a both and versus an either or. So these are just some of the things that I'm seeing as to why this stuff exists. But healthy masculinity does not come with at all bullying. It's the antithesis of what's powerful and manly, in my opinion.
Totally. I totally agree with you on that one, because that, it is interesting as we, just having some fun technical difficulties as we do a show. So everybody forgive my new background for right now. But this is always fancy. It's like, hi, I'm just here. But when you talk about this, I just don't understand. And I'm coming from a perspective different than most. I'm a Marine, right? So when you think manly, and you also could think bullying, because we're kind of known for always being right because we're Marines. But this is different. How do I word this and make this make sense for our audience? Well, one thing I've noticed with this president and his followers is they've become a lot like him. It's this attitude that no one else is right. It's your right or there's no right, and you're in all the name calling that comes with a difference of opinion, which we used to be able to have a difference of opinion in our country. Now you're called a snowflake, or even if you're not a liberal. I mean, I've had Republican friends of mine called snowflakes and liberals, and they're like, was it mandatory I have to like the president if I'm Republican? I'm like, look, I was registered as a Republican, and I loved Barack Obama. Met the dude over 8 times. So are there rules that I didn't get? I feel like I'm missing a set of rules. So when we come back from this break, Dominick, I want to continue that conversation. I want to go a little long on this because I think it's important, because bullying is so important. And these next 30 days are so key in more things than just an election, because our country is at this interesting teetering point where you almost don't want to go in any direction. You just want to try to bring us back from the brink of bad. So when we come back from the break, we're going to have more with our guest, Dominick. We're going to talk more about bullying and manliness. Stay tuned. Back here on To The Point. We're having an interesting discussion here talking about bullying, which is different to see two men in their 40s talking about bullying, but I don't think it's a bad thing. To me, and I know I used to be a bully. I really will admit that I've been one. And it's not something that I'm proud of. It's embarrassing that, I think it's something you led to before we had to go to commercial, where I think it was a weakness in me. I mean, would you agree with that, Dominic, that it was more of a weakness, like I was intimidated of others, so my bullying was more like, oh, I'm gonna pick on them for the way they look, their weight, like I was anybody. I was a fat dude picking on people, calling other people fat, like, go figure that one, right? So, I mean, is there a relation there? Like bullying leads to like weakness somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, the paradox here is that bullying can feel quite powerful. It can be experienced as strong, especially if you're on the receiving end of being bullied. It can be someone dominating over you, and it can feel like power, especially when we have someone who's in the highest office in the United States who demonstrates a lot of those abilities, can also even, to a certain degree, almost validate bullying, at least in the eyes of some people. Let's be very clear. Bullying is the antithesis of strength. Bullying is inner weakness. We see bullying from people when their inner worlds have so much chaos, insecurity, doubt, that in order to stabilize internally, they have to control their environment and surroundings. And we see this show up in needing to dominate someone else. The only way I can feel secure or balanced inside is when I am reigning supreme over someone or putting someone else down. That's how I feel strong. Or the need for validation, right? I need to either hold rallies for people to agree and cheer everything that I say, or I just need praise and approval. Bullying is the opposite of strength. Now, someone who is strong has his or her stability on the inside, right? Finds the courage on the inside, doesn't need someone else's approval. In fact, can stand inside the eye of a storm and have people disagree with you and still hear all of that and say, not for me. No, that's not true. And not let it penetrate them. That's real strength. But for some reason, we've started to, well, for some reason, I think we've talked about the reason, Eric, that for the past 4 years, there's been this gaining momentum that bullying, asserting power over others, dominating others, squashing out others' voices is what's seen to be a strength. But you and I are here to talk about, to pull back the lens on that, to expose that and to say that is the opposite of what strength is.
So true. So let me ask you this, well, when we talk about being a bully, how do we fix it, right? Because I know as a father, I'm proud of myself that my 13-year-old does not do this. Like, I'm proud of him that I've listened to him and his friends. They seem to be, I don't know if it's a generation thing. Could you almost say that this new generation they're a little different? I think the people who are struggling with bullies are our age, and the older side of millennials. Sorry, millennials, some of you are on the older side. You're getting closer to that 40 age that you freak out about, and then you join us. Haha, welcome. You're welcome. You can join us. It's a fun. Come to the plank. It's interesting. You've had the same technology as you. We're just a little bit older, and we're better at video games. But I mean, do you think there's a relation there? Do you think the younger generation who was raised, let's just face it, on Barack Obama, that's what they had? Most of these kids, I know my kids had 8 years of Barack Obama. They saw something we never saw. I mean, never ever in my mind. I remember Jesse Jackson running for president, and that was like, there was the black guy running for president. Now we had amazing Barack Obama. I don't know why I naturally say his name Obama like that, but it just happens. Do you think there's a relation to that with the younger generation? Isn't as they're more peaceful. They're more peacenicky. They're more of the 60s, free mind, like everybody, we need to love everybody, we care about their feelings. And our generation is like bitter. Does that make sense to you? Is kind of where I'm running with that.
Yeah, I think there's a few things here, man. And when you talked about the 8 years of Obama, it makes me think about a time where I saw Obama being heckled at a town hall, and there was one person screaming out at him, trying to interrupt him, and the entire audience raced to throw that heckler out, and Obama peacefully stopped and said, hang on, let me address this person, and he can stay. And he very calmly, compassionately corrected that man, but also with like a real stern demeanor, just standing up for what he believed in, using fact that he was grounded in. And that's like the textbook case of strength, right? And I think 8 years of macro examples like that, but also micro examples of how he showed up every day, for sure, has an effect on a generation. I would also say that there's been a lot more attention around the conversation of bullying in the younger generations, primarily because social media has made bullying such an easier thing to do. And then also educating on bullying being something much easier to spread the word on. So I believe what I've been seeing, and I don't necessarily have all empirical evidence, I'm going anecdotally from my own experience. What I have been seeing is there is more attention around this conversation of bullying. There seems to be more compassion at a broader scale. There seems to be less patience and understanding for bullying. And to get to your question, Eric, about like, how do we change this? Well, I think we're doing part of it, but one of the biggest parts that I'm taking a bite out of as a man is I'm very attuned to what specific forms of masculine bullying are. You are too, having been a military guy. I'm an athlete. I've been in the fraternity. I've been in sales environments and corporate. I know many different shades and flavors of bullying. It's when men step up and talk to other men and also intervene with bullies and tell them that's not cool, and are courageous enough to deal with the blowback, particularly when it's not just one man versus another man, but when it's one man who's bullying with a group of other bystanders, where one voice can stand up to all of them and intervene and say, that's not okay. Because there are plenty of other bystanders who are there who want to speak up, but don't have the courage to, and they need that first guy to move.
So two things. One, do you have time to go a little bit longer? I want to go a little long. I want to go here, go to the break, and come back with you because I still want to cover two more topics. So cool. It's my show, so we're doing this. I just want to give you permission to do it because I'm really enjoying this conversation. So it's interesting that you bring that up, talking about this anger. My fear is we had 8 years of President Obama, which brought bullying. Obviously, way too many school shootings have occurred, more than I can ever think. I remember when Columbine happened, and I was like, oh, we'll fix this. And then Sandy Hook happened, and I go, we'll fix this too. And I guess the benefit of COVID is we haven't had mass shootings. I guess we can say that's a good thing. But my fear is this. November 3rd happens, and we have another 4 years. So this generation, including all of us, have another 4 years of what I can say has been the most violent 4 years that I can remember. People fighting. I live in Portland, Oregon. Our streets are full of two sides fighting. I mean, we just had it the other night, a white supremacist group, or a hate group. They're like, oh, his leader's Latino. Okay, he is. You're right, he is. They're still a hate group. DHS marked them as a hate group. They showed up with AR-15s. If you're armed, roaming around, you're probably not a good person. So when we come back from the break, I want your thoughts on, do you think it could get worse and where we could get headed, and how do we prevent that? And then I'd like to also talk a little bit about Chris Wallace, and then we can let you go. But I want to get your feedback on that, because what you said really struck a nerve, because that's what my concern is. Both sides of the sword here. As much as I'd really like to see Joe win, there's a strong chance that he will not. I mean, there's a lot of people who support this current president, and more power to them. If they all vote and they do their thing, remember, folks, go out and vote November 3rd. But, I mean, everybody has the power to do that. If the populace says that's who they want, then that's our country speaking. That doesn't mean we have to agree with it. So when we come back from the break, folks, we'll have more with Dominick. Stay tuned. Back here on To The Point, having an amazing conversation with my good friend Dominick here. We're talking about bullying. It's something that's been in the news. Dominick, we see it on social media every day. A lot of people I know in September started this purge of social, where they're like, I'm just not going to be on until after November 3rd. So before we went to commercial, I brought up the fact that there's a strong possibility that the current administration could stay in. And this current behavior of I'm right, you're wrong, nana, 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 is going to stay on. So how do we counter that? Let's think positive. We've talked a lot about negative, and for this part of the show, I want to be positive because they always say pace, lead. So we're going to use that method, and I believe that let's leave the folks with something that we could wrap our heads around because we could deal with this. How do we change this behavior? How do we get people to go, okay, I don't agree with you. That's fine, but why do we have to block each other? Why can't we be friends? We have to sit across from each other at Thanksgiving. At least we have to do FaceTime calls. It's going to be uncomfortable for or challenging family members to fight on social media. It sounds ridiculous, but I've seen it. I've been part of it. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we're going to have a boxing match? This isn't Rocky 5. I picked the one without the Russian, by the way, on purpose. Because
well done.
Well done. I did that on purpose. All the Rocky movies are fabulous. Just Rocky 5 was, I don't know. I don't even know if I saw that one. But so what are your thoughts? How do we change the narrative? And I think men, not just men, but everybody change this narrative of this bullying behavior, because this is the first time, and I know this is a longer kind of question to you. It's 2 parts. But what about even I've seen women now kind of get this angry, and it's not feminism, which I totally support. It's this angry, you're wrong, I'm right, shame on you, shunning of people. And I've seen it, especially when it comes to presidential stuff. Not sports, not spandex, not Peloton. No, it's a president. We're losing our minds over a president. So how do we fix this? How do we get on the right again?
Yeah, there's a few, it's a great question. There's a few answers. The first thing, taking a positive standpoint on this, Eric, we talked about before how bullying is really coming from a place of inner weakness, right? And I know that you referenced earlier that there were parts of you that used to bully. And I think the first place that we can come to is understanding that there's like some compassion. It's hard to have compassion for our president right now because he's been jammed down our throat for the past 4 years. But there is a part of me that can find compassion for almost any bully because I know what weakness feels like. I know what insecurity feels like. I know what it's like to doubt myself internally. I know what it's like to need to stabilize off of external sources, validation, money, approval, you name it, in order for me to feel a sense of strength. One of my favorite characters of movies of all time is John Bender from The Breakfast Club, right? He was like the consummate bully, but when you peeled back the layer of his onion, he was abused and beaten and disrespected at home. And so that's what showed up in the world. So I think a first part of this is recognizing that, the people who are resonating with our president, who resonate with bullies, on some level, it is shining a light on how many people are hurting internally. And I understand that it can be really difficult to have compassion for people who are casting down stones on another, beating down other, violent against another, misogynistic against another. I totally understand why compassion may be the last place you want to go, but I can see that, I can feel that, and I need that if I'm going to bridge the gap with some of these folks. Because the other option is just all-out war, and we've had enough war, right? And I choose a higher road. Now, the other part of this is we need to be able to cultivate more strength, more courage in the men and women here who can stand up and draw a line in the sand when we see bullying. Like the example I gave you before with Barack Obama and the heckler saying, stop, no, that person's welcome, but I'm going to correct you. And to do it from a place of grace and compassion to show how it's done, we need that as well. So this is a call to more courageous men and women, however you identify. When you see that thing, instead of biting your tongue now, we need you to stand up. I need to stand up in places where I would have remained silent before, if we ever want this thing to change.
You're right. And I think another thing that goes with that, the time of Barack Obama, I don't know why his name's so suddenly hard to say, but the late John McCain, an amazing, an American hero. I know that we've had to hear horrible things about him for the last 4 years, but the man is a hero, as a POW, as a Vietnam veteran, served our country not only as a vet, also as a senator. He had somebody go make derogatory comments, I remember, in a town hall about President Obama when they were running against each other, and he stopped them and corrected them right there. And I was like, boom. I was like, that is a man. That's what you want. Here's a guy who could have jumped on that grenade and been like, ha, ha, ride that, like, what's his name? And That Stanley Kubrick movie, riding a nuclear warhead down. Come on, I mean, he had the opportunity and didn't. So I just wanted to piggyback on that. So before we close and we send you on your merry way, and I want to thank you again, Bud, for joining us. One of the people we promised everybody we wanted to talk about, we've talked about Biden, who I thought handled the situation well. Real fast before we go this, as a father, Biden won me over because he didn't reach across the stage and punch the man when he disrespected his son who died of cancer, also served our country. His other son who served our country, unfortunately, had some drug issues. But Chris Wallace, you talk about tolerance and patience, right? Things that a lot of us need. That man lost control of he was a moderator. A moderator's supposed to have complete control and not be intimidated of the man who is talking. It doesn't matter if he's the president of the United States, the Pope. You agree to terms to come on this, you got to follow the rules. What was your thoughts on Chris Wallace? What pointers, if you had a chance to say, hey, Chris? As Dominick, the average Joe American sitting in my home watching you, I felt that I get it, you're a respected journalist, but you lost complete control. America, we were depending on you. It's like we were depending on those first two to talk to us. At least I like Biden giving us the Jim from The Office look all the time. But Chris Wallace, we wanted to be the dad, to be like, sit down, be quiet, or I swear to God, I'm going to pull this car over. I'm going to hit you with my flip-flop. I mean, that's what we were almost at. So what advice would you give Mr. Wallace? What were your thoughts on Mr. Wallace during that debate?
Well, I think we can all agree that Chris Wallace and whoever is hosting the coming debates have the least enviable job in the country right now, right? So, I wouldn't want it. It comes with a whole heaping load of difficulties and challenges. So I want to get that out of the way first. But like you said, Eric, Chris Wallace's job was to set the container, like the playing field for this game to be played, not unlike referees or officials who are overseeing a football game or a basketball game. And when the game spirals out of control, right, if flagrant fouls are happening, personal fouls are happening, it's incumbent upon the officials, on the referees, to sort that stuff out, to put a quick line in the sand, to know when things are about to bubble over and stop it before it happens so that the game can be played. And given the evidence that we've had over the last 4 years, right, of Donald Trump's behavior and also his loathing of Joe Biden, I think we could have anticipated that something like this was very likely, and to not to be on alert for that, not to have a contingency plan for that, not to stuff it out, to stomp it down right at the very beginning, was a disservice. Now, I will give Chris Wallace a ton of credit because I know he came out today and he owned that. And as a man, we're talking about what's brave and courageous and how we started this conversation, like admitting when you're wrong. He admitted it. And he said he would have done it differently and he would have stepped in earlier. And it was one of the most difficult moderating jobs, maybe the most difficult moderating job in presidential debate history. And he knows that he could have done better. So I would say, for whoever's coming up next, right? And we've already heard that the declaration from President Trump that he's not going to play by the rules, that the situation needs to be anticipated. And we need to see better from those who are officiating this forum. The American people deserve better.
Amen to that, because you're right. I love the sports analogy. Could you imagine LeBron James going, I don't want to play by those rules. We're going to play by my own rules on the court, right? I don't agree with the NBA officials. Or Tom Brady, nope, I don't want to play by those rules. So it's interesting when people think that they can color outside the lines, and you can't. I mean, we have a constitution for a reason. We have laws for a reason, and no one is above the law. And to behave above the law isn't very presidential. And I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. You want your president to follow the very laws. True meaning of leadership. And we'll have you back, Dominick, to talk about leadership, because that's a whole nother 40-minute show. We don't want to unpack that box today. We already got producers seriously. But I definitely think that it's just bananas, man. I don't have enough words to put this out. So before you go, tell folks how they can follow you, anything that you want to have people know about, books, anything. I know you have a book coming out. I have heard the rumor mill has, he's going to pop a book up, watch.
Right here, man. It just came out on the 22nd of September. The book is called On Purpose Leadership. And it's about mastering the art of leading yourself first so you can inspire and impact others. And it's basically the entire conversation we just had, Eric, about going inward, leading yourself first versus telling everyone else what to do. And I think this is definitely a field guide for the next 4 years of our lives as we're coming out of the pandemic, as we are going to be either adjusting to a new president or 4 more years of this president. It's a timely book. And I would say the other thing is I run a podcast for men called The Great Man Within Podcast. And it's for the man who wants to live his full potential. We talk all about purpose, personal leadership, living a life of your own design. So for a man who's into that, or for someone who knows a man that you love, please send them to The Great Man Within Podcast. And I'd love to serve you there.
Outstanding. Well, Bud, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been an amazing conversation. So I apologize to anybody who tuned in thinking they're going to give you 2 guests today on To The Point. We're giving you 1, and it's been a hell of a conversation. I made the decision that we were doing this today on the fly because, well, when you watch the show, it's called To The Point with Eric Mitchell for a reason. That means I get to make these decisions as we go. So I thank you for playing along, calling an audible with me, and running the plays the way we were supposed to, and not bullying me to get off early. See how I tied everything in? And wasn't it coinky dink? I ended it talking about leadership and your book. So, and everybody can go out and get your book on Amazon. I'm sure that's where everyone buys books. So we'll have that link below. You can check it out on C-Suite Network. We'll have all the details there, and also on our YouTube channel. And if you're watching on Facebook, scroll down in the description of today's show, and you will see Dominick's book, so you can run out and buy it and check out his podcast. We'll give both those links for you, folks. Dominick, Bud, thank you so much for joining us today. We do appreciate you joining us. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you too, Eric, man.
Thanks. Everybody else, we'll be right back after these messages. And folks, that is our show for today. I want to thank our guest, Dominick Quartuccio, for joining us today. I just like saying his name and using little hands. It just makes it better. We have a heck of a show for you tomorrow on Wednesday, October 7th. And yes, you caught me looking down because I needed to remember that tomorrow's the 7th. All these days seem to bleed together, folks. But we have an amazing show for you tomorrow. We have Miss 2019 Veteran America talking about Miss Veteran America 2020 coming up this weekend, where you can live stream and watch it and tune in to see some of America's finest competing for an amazing title. That's right, Miss Veteran America. It's really a thing, and it's awesome. One of their keynotes has been a guest on our show, and the founder of Miss Veteran America has been a guest on our show. So the keynote speaker, the MC for the event, is the wonderful Marine Corps veteran Kirstie Enos. And it is, again, Miss Veteran America by its creator, the wonderful and amazing Jess Booth, who's been a guest on here talking about Final Salute Inc. Go check out Miss Veteran America. She'll be on our show tomorrow. Can't wait to interview her. And then we also have, for your branding folks out there who are trying to think about, should I build a website? And where should I start? I have a great guest coming on the show tomorrow to talk about all things IT and building your company inside. Obviously, you'll have me for the beginning of the show talking about everything that's happened in the news prior to the show. But for the rest of the show, you have them. So we have amazing guests. This is the format moving forward. Also, on Thursday, we have an amazing sports show for you. Obviously, as we recap the NFL season, we will recap what goes on in the NBA, the WNBA Major League Baseball playoffs. Yep, so we have this week, we have the wonderful Jeff Attila joining us from the Portland Timbers, and the man, the myth, the legend, sports icon Brandon Steiner is back with us. We have a giveaway with Brandon you don't want to miss on Thursday. Friday, we have a great show for you also. It'll be myself and my wonderful co-host, Jordan Gilbert, joining me again this Friday with our guest, Brando Crawford. The man is on point. You will love that interview. I guarantee you Brando is going to bring the heat. It'll be fun. We're going to be talking about Hollywood and how he's created an amazing Hollywood-related charity event that has just blown up with some amazing names joining it. So we can't wait to talk to him on Friday. So again, folks, thanks for tuning in today to The Point. And again, thanking our guest and our wonderful casting crew. On behalf of the entire team here at To The Point, we thank you. As always, I'm your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Get to the point, sit and enjoy. This is Eric Mitchell, he the host of the show. Get to the point, he is the voice. We needed this, something more. This a daily show that's known for politics and the sports. Ain't no limit to whoever you may see at this point. To celebrities, Eric Key's beast in the joint. As a veteran, put him at ease, then anoint. Every conversation can never be disappointed. Whether tragic or it's happy, Eric will cover whatever's happening. Whether it be your gymnast, toe tapping, talking about nearly any athlete, not taking a back seat. You're never gonna get it past T. Everybody running from it, it's a stampede. But he's on it like this man who took that knee. Mr. Mitchell's way too crafty. Get to the point.